evening, everyone. We'll call our meeting to order. First item we have bill introductions. Are there any bills? Seeing none, we'll move on to our budget reports. Start out with the Committee on Education and Senator Solentrum. School of the Blind.
I don't know if the chairman cares to hear this or not. I guess we can begin. So there we go. We got a great backup plan. All right, Kansas School of the Blind. The agency requests a revised estimate of $7.9 million, including $5.8 million SGF in FY22. This is an all funds increase of $103,000 or 1.3% and an SGF decrease of $13,000 or 0.2% from the amount approved in the 21 legislature. The revised estimate includes 81.5 FTE positions, which is the same number approved by the 21 legislature. The revised estimate includes an operating budget of $7 million, including $5.8 million SGF in 22. It's an all funds increase of 103 or 1.5% and SGF decrease of 13,000 or 0.2% from the amount approved by the 21 legislature. The increase is primarily due to increased expenditures from the general fee fund. General fee fund revenue and expenditures fluctuate according to the number of students needing paraprofessional assistance. The revised estimate includes a capital improvement budget of $919,000, all from state institutions building fund in FY22. This is the same amount as approved by the 21 legislature. The governor recommends total expenditures of $7.9 million, including $5.8 million SGF in 22. It's an increase of $12,000 SGF or 0.2% above the agency's FY22 revised estimate. The governor recommends adding $12,533 SGF in 22 to implement the 24/7 pay initiative recommended by the Spark Task Force and approved by the State Finance Council. The plan provides a temporary base pay increase for hourly and salaried staff, pay differentials for hourly personnel, and one-time premium pay allocations up to $3,500 for salaried staff. The governor also concurs with the agency's capital improvement budget for FY22. Recommendations include 81.5 FTE positions, which is the same number as the revised estimate for 22. The Senate Committee on Education concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustments. Add $283,000 SIBF to move the student use elevator upgrade capital improvement project from 23 to 22. And I guess on that note, they need an improved elevator system for their school because they're having to take students out and around different directions to get to places that an elevator would provide them a lot more safer and better transportation and arrangement. And if I may, I can call on Senator Fagg to add any comments. He did a personal tour.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. I got pictures of the place, so anybody wants to see that, I think you'd find interesting. The only thing that I would add that they've got HVAC that they've got planned out that's pretty expensive. I was hoping that they applied with Spark, and I see John shaking his head yes. To me, that's a priority from what I've seen right now for efficiencies, so hopefully that go through. I feel like that's more important than that elevator deal. The elevator deal is something new. It's not a rebuild, and it's putting them down into the swimming pool area. So would we like to have that? Yes, but that HVAC was more important to me. So that's just my opinion. I'm proud of what they do there is what I'd say, Senator.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from the committee?
Senator Hawk.
That's your job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much ballpark was that HVAC system rehab? Do we know?
Senator Fagg.
John might help me with this, but I was thinking around $3 million, wasn't it, John?
Approximately $3 million. Other questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's okay with the committee, I'd make a motion to accept 22 and 23 budget committee reports on the Kansas State School of the Blind.
For 2022
Both years.
and 23.
23.
Okay. Senator Clay seconds. Any other questions or discussion? Do we want to put something in here about looking at this HVAC when we put this all together, or what's the committee's feelings on this?
Senator, if I may, I'd defer to Senator Fagg. He was closest to the issue and has kind of taken that upon himself to get the information. But if that's the intention of the committee, that's fine. We can re-review that.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping that we'll use federal funds first with
Okay.
this. If we don't, we need to do it.
So you want us to look at this maybe at Omnibus, see if they've been able to get some federal funds? Okay, we might note that then in this report. Is that okay, Senator Solon-Trump?
That's fine with me because I think the minority member here would be glad to look at it at Omnibus.
Okay, so we'll note that. We have a motion second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the School of the Deaf. Senator Solon-Trump.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kansas School, whoops, I got the wrong one here. Kansas State School for the Deaf. The agency requests a revised estimate of $12.5 million, including $9.6 million SGF in FY22. This is an all funds increase of $763,000 or 6.5%, and an SGF decrease of $23,000 or less than 1% from the amount approved by the 21 legislature. The revised estimate includes 143.5 FTEs, which is the same number as approved in 21. The revised estimates include an operating budget of $11.3 million, including $9.6 million SGF in 22. This is an all funds increase of $750,000 or 7.1%, and an SGF decrease of $23,000 or 0.2% from the approved amount in 21. The all funds increase is primarily attributable to funding transferred from the Kansas State Department of Education and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to fund Phase 3 of the LAP, which is $545,000. Increased special revenue funds. The increase in the LAP was transferred from Kansas Department of Education and Kansas Department of Health and Environment from unused funds in 21. The revised estimate includes a capital improvement budget of $1.2 million, all from state institutions building fund. In FY22, this is the increase of $13,000 or 1.1% above the 22 approved amount. The increase is due to the agencies requesting the reappropriation of funding from 21 to 22. The governor recommends expenditures of $12.5 million, including $9.6 million SGF in FY22. This is an increase of $17,000 SGF above the agency's 22 revised estimate due to the governor's recommendation to implement the 24/7 pay plan recommended by the Spark Task Force and approved by the State Finance Council. The plan provides a temporary base pay increase for hourly and salaried staff, pay differentials for hourly personnel, and one-time premium pay allocations up to $3,500 for salary staff. The governor concurs with the agency's capital improvements for 22 revised estimate. The Committee on Education concurs with the governor's recommendation for 22. If there's no questions, I can go on to 23. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you. 23, the agency requests $13.1 million, including $10.4 million SGF for 23. This is an all funds increase of $585,000 or 4.7%, including an SGF increase of $856,000 or 8.9% above the FY22 revised estimate. This request includes $143.5 FTE positions, which is the same for 22 revised estimate number. The agency request includes an operating budget of 11.6, including 10.4 million SGF for FY23. This is an all funds increase of 261,000 or 2.3% and an SGF increase of 856,000 or 8.9% above the FY22 revised estimate. The increase is primarily attributable to increased expenditures for salary and wages for staff and for contractual services due to the agency's enhancement request for increased dorm and paraprofessional salaries and the implementation of Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the language assessment program. The SGF increase is partially offset by decreased special revenue funds to reflect the end of the one-time funding for the LAP Phase 3 from KDHE and KSDE. Without the enhancement request, the agency's 23 operating budget request totals 10.8 million, including 9.7 SGF. Significant items in the agency's request include the following. Teacher salary increase. KSA 7611A17 requires teachers from KSSD be paid the same as teachers at USD 233 Olathe in the prior year. The agency's FY23 budget includes $75,000 associated with these teacher salary and wage increases. This is a 2.5% increase from FY22. Enhancement for dorm and paraprofessional salary increase. The agency requests 112,000 SGF for a 10% increase in dorm and paraprofessional staff salaries and wages. The agency stated this funding is necessary to compete with other high-paying job opportunities in the area and recruit and retain dorm and paraprofessional staff. Enhancement for LAP Phase 3 and Phase 4 implementation. The agency requests $658,000 to implement Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the LAP in FY23. Funding for Phase 3 implementation is $466,000. Includes expenditures for salaries and wages for 3 specialists and 1 interpreter position. Assessment tools, training and travel costs, and technology. Funding for Phase 4 implementation is $192,000. Includes expenditures for salary and wages for 2.5 FTE positions, assessment tools, training costs, and technology. The agency request also includes capital improvement budget of $1.5 million from all state institutions building fund for FY23. This is an increase of $323,000 or 26.9% above the FY22 revised estimate. This increase is primarily attributable to increased expenditures for rehabilitation and repair and major classroom renovations as planned. The governor recommends expenditures of $12.5 million, including 9.9 SGF for FY23. This is an SGF decrease of $569,000 or 4.6% below the agency's 23 request. The decrease is primarily attributable to the governor not recommending the agency's enhancement request for Phase 3 and Phase 4 implementation of the LAP. The decrease is partially offset by $56,000 in additional funding for KSA 7611A17 salary increases, which brings the total expenditures for these increases to $131,000 SGF. Additionally, the recommendation includes $33,000 associated with the governor's pay plan for nursing positions. The governor's recommendation includes a capital improvement budget of $1.5 million, all from the state institutions building fund, which is unchanged from the agency's 23 request. The governor's recommendation also includes 143.5 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the agency's 23 request. The Committee on Education concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustment. The committee recommends the Senate Committee on Ways and Means review the agency's enhancement request for Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the language assessment program, $668,000, and identify alternative means of funding the program, such as funding from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Kansas Department of Education, or fee-for-service model for 23. That, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. I guess one question is, why would the governor not approve this Phase 3 and Phase 4? We started that in 2016. It looks like we need to fund it if we're, do you have any
Mr. Chairman,
clue on that?
I cannot explain to you why the governor made her recommendations. You will have to consult with the with the governor and the administration.
Well, I think it's something, and I'm glad that you recommend that the whole committee look at this because, you know, as in anything, the earlier we get started with these children, especially when they have a challenge, the more successful they'll be going forward. And I do know that in later years, when these kids get to become, you know, juniors, seniors in high school, they're still quite a ways behind because we didn't get to them early enough. And, you know, I think that this is something that our whole committee needs to look at funding. I think it's important that, you know, it's kind of like the Tiny K program, you know, it saves us a lot of money going forward. And I think this is another example of where we can spend money well worth the money. So, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there someone from the governor's office that could explain that?
I don't know, is there anyone here or online?
Perhaps we should get that answer there. The other question I have is there someone from the school could answer that question?
It's probably just a bunch of opinions, you know.
Let's get the answer. Perhaps we can get that answer
Okay.
before the end. The other question, my math isn't adding up here on the FTEs. Number one, are we fully staffed for 143.5? Do we have those? Is it fully staffed now?
I don't know. Could we ask someone from the school? Yes. Yes, please come up to the mic and state name. You probably need to go to the mic. There you go. Okay, there you go.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. I'm Luann Barron. I'm the superintendent for the Kansas School for the Deaf. In response to the question on 143.5 FTE, not all of those positions are filled. We currently have 123 FTE positions filled. We haven't had enough money to fill all of those positions.
Okay, and as far as the phase 3 and phase 4, how many positions? I think I read, was it 3 and 1?
3 and 1.
Okay, and
We want to have a total of 4 for phase 3
so
and
4,
2.5, 2.5 for phase 4.
so we're talking 6.5 total for 3 and 4?
That's correct.
Okay. And Senator Alley, you had a question?
My question is, I thought we were fully funded for the 143, and yet we have 129, and now we're adding another
We have
7.
123 positions that are filled.
So they have 20 unfilled positions on,
We're asking for 7 more, basically, in these two.
right, for the implementation of the LAP program is to finish phase 3 and phase 4.
Thank you.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, and then I do have a question. I'm glad to see the committee asking us to look further into the phase 3 and 4. I know we had in my district when I was superintendent, we had speech and hearing staff, and so I think it's good to say, is this the best way to deliver this program? What are the pros and cons? And do we use too much time on windshield time? Is there another way to look at it? So I think it would be good for us to get a presentation on that and see if that's the most efficient way to deliver that. likely is, but maybe there are some other ways. And then the other question I had was, these teacher salaries are associated with the Olathe salary schedule. Is that also true of the School for the Blind? I didn't see that mentioned. Are they also tied into Olathe salary schedule?
Yes, that's true.
Good.
Yes, they both are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fag.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That HVAC that we was talking about earlier, that 3.2, I think covers both facilities, doesn't it, John? Or do you know? I seen both of them, and I had 3.2. They covered both of them. So,
Calvin, would you like to come to the mic?
the other thing, Mr. Chairman, that I wanted to mention, the superintendent is a special person. And I didn't know she was going to be here today, and I'd like to give her a round of applause for the job that she does for those kids. She is a graduate of the school.
Senator Petty.
I hope that when we, I think Senator Hawk spoke to this, but when we look at the best way to fund this language assessment program, that there is the Department of Education and KDHE have been looking at as it was mentioned, a fee for service. There's also what someone else referred to, Tiny K, there are services there. So I think there is, and Senator Alley had asked about from the governor's office, I think this was also part of what was being looked at as to whether this was, if the School for the Deaf was the only way to handle this assessment program, or are there other services that we already have in place for 0 to 5, and then at the fee for service level at the elementary level. So I hope that that we have a presentation, we'll look at both, decide which would provide, one, the services that are needed, but two, that we would effectively be funding over time, because this is not a one-time expenditure.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, I have one more question. Yes, for this, if she would, please. I was just wanting to know, do we know how many children total we would maybe be serving between the ages of 1 and 8 when this is fully implemented?
So it runs from birth to age 8.
Oh, okay,
So
birth date.
The current estimate that we have is 772 children, and that's based on newborn hearing screening results. Those who have been identified as being deaf from birth, and tracking them and projecting that out over 8 years if they stay in the state of Kansas. Additionally, we receive information from KSDE on students who have IEPs, and that's what led to our estimate of 772 children birth to age 8.
Thank
However,
you.
I suspect that number is much larger than 772 children who are deaf, hard of hearing statewide.
I think there's more that haven't been identified.
Yes, either they haven't been identified, or they have a late onset hearing loss, or they are perhaps on a 504 plan. So we have no way of tracking and identifying all of the children within the state from birth to really age 21. We don't have a specific number. We have a strong estimate that we believe at least 772 children will be served when LAP is fully implemented.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just think when we figure out where we're at on this, you know, for $668,000, that's less than $1,000 a child. I mean, that's, to me, is, it's a rounding there, so. What's it based on? Right. But what we're talking here is implementing phase 3 and 4, and I look at it as how many kids are probably in that age group, 0 to 8, and additional less than $1,000 per child to fully implement the program, is what I'm getting at. Any other questions? Seeing none, Senator Solon-Trump, if you'd like to make your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might add that there was a question about the capital improvement program in each school. It's 1.9 for the School of the Blind, and that's a 5-year capital improvement plan with various issues and phases to be completed. And on the deaf, it's 3.1 million. Again, 5-year capital plan with various improvements being made. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the committee, I would ask for approval of the Kansas State School of the Deaf budget recommendations for 22 and 23.
Second by Senator Clays. Any other questions? Senator Petty?
So does that include that we will have a look at this phase 3 and phase 4 language assessment funding methods prior to omnibus?
Sure.
Senator Solon-Trump?
We can attach that to it, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, and complete that at omnibus.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to make sure we have that added on. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Department of Education. Senator Solon-Trump.
Mr. Chairman, the Kansas State Department of Education budget, the agency requests a revised estimate of $6.1 billion, including $4.2 billion SGF in FY22. This is an all funds increase of $314 million or 5.4% and an SGF decrease of $31 million or 0.7% from the amount approved in the 21 legislature. Significant items in the agency's estimate include the following. Federal COVID-19 funding. The agency's revised estimate in 22 includes $345 million from federal COVID-19 relief funding. The majority of this funding will be awarded to unified school districts for COVID-19 related expenditures. More information on this funding can be found online in a KLRD memorandum, COVID-19 federal funds for K-12 education. This includes lapsing $9 million, all from the federal elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund, which was approved by the 21 legislature for school safety and security grants, the mental health intervention team, pilot program, and communities in school. Adding $329 million to reflect a portion of the federal funds, monies appropriated by Congress in federal legislation, including the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, and the American Rescue Plan Act, known as ARPA. Adding $16.3 million to reflect federal emergency assistance to non-public schools, funding for the private schools, and adding $8.7 million for emergency child nutrition funding under the CRRSAA. KPERS employer contributions rate decrease. The agency revised estimate includes the deletion of $31.3 million from the approved amount to reflect decreased KPERS employer contribution rates for KPERS USDs and KPERS non-USDs. This is partially offset by the appropriations noted above. Special Revenue Fund reappropriations. The agency requests $452,000 from the Children's Initiative Fund and Key Fund be appropriated for 21 and 22. The governor recommends expenditures of $6.5 billion, including $4.6 billion SGF in '22. This is an increase of $404 million, or 6.6%, including SGF increase of $394 million, or 9.4% above the agency's FY22 revised estimate. The increase is primarily attributable to the governor recommending a one-time appropriation to eliminate delayed school payments and to pay off the CAPERS layering payments in '22. Significant items in the governor's recommendation include the following. Education consensus adjustment. The governor recommends adoption of the fall '21 education consensus estimate in '22. For school finance, the governor recommends decreased expenditures of $34.8 million, including $45.1 million SGF, below the approved amount and below the agency's revised estimate. For CAPERS, the governor recommends decreased expenditures of $35 million, all SGF, below the approved amounts and below the agency's revised estimate. The individual components of the fall '21 education consensus estimate are described in the special topic section of this budget analysis. Education superhighway. The governor recommends additional expenditures of $178,000 SGF for the state match for the said education superhighway program in FY22. The education superhighway program supports school building access to high-speed internet. USD 361 Chaparral notified KSDE that its E-rate funding application was approved in '22, which would require additional funding. Eliminate delayed school payment. The governor recommends additional expenditures of $199 million SGF to eliminate delayed state aid payments to school districts in FY22. The one-time expenditure will allow the state to make timely payments for obligations incurred in the same fiscal year and will end the current accounting practice. CAPERS layering payment payoff. The governor recommends additional expenditures of $253 million SGF in '22 to pay off the CAPERS school payments to eliminate the debt owed to the state's retirement system. This recommendation by the governor is estimated to save the state an aggregate of $189 million in interest payments over each loan's final maturity. The governor's recommendation also includes 269 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the agency's '22 estimate. The Senate Committee on Education recommendation concurs with the governor's recommendations for '22 with the following adjustments. Delete $253 million SGF from CAPERS layering payment in '22, as the transfers is included in the previous provisions of SB 421. Due to this budget, I'll take them one at a time. Questions on '22?
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the CAPERS layering payment, I think your recommendation is right on because we did that as a transfer with Senate Bill 421. So we don't need to count that as an expenditure. I just wanted to make sure with staff that we're not inadvertently cutting the education budget that would get us into an issue with Gannon. And I don't think it does, but I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Chairman, that would help.
Senator Solentrum.
That would help the senator get reelected because it would not show we cut education.
That's not always a plus, Senator from Sedgwick. So if that's the case, I'm good with that. The other thing I found sort of interesting is Chaparral got their E-rate funding, USD 361, and so we had to make an adjustment with that education superhighway. Were there other districts? Is that just that they got late funding, or that just seems a little odd that only one district? I'm sure other districts got E-rate funding.
There should not be others.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So it's just a one-time thing? That still seems odd to me.
Chaparral Roadrunners.
I'm glad they got their E-rate funding.
Yeah.
Thrilled with it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to the CAPERS layering payment, did we not address the school payment, delayed school payment?
We have not. anything on the delayed payment. And I guess I would go back to Senator Hawk's question, you know, are we going to short them 1 year and going to be long 1 year, or how's that all going to work?
With the delayed payment, I thought there was legislation, maybe I'm reading something into this that I haven't got, but I thought there was legislation to pay off this 199.6. I thought we had talked about that.
Well, we have, but nothing's been done yet. We've not done a bill on that. And I guess I would ask staff, do we need a bill on that, Amy? Senator Alley, we do not need a bill on that. It's in her rec. So if we accept the governor's recommendation, we are approving paying that on time.
Perhaps my memory's failing a little bit, but I was almost certain it was a bill to pay that off, but it may not be in this committee. Thank you.
Yes, and make sure we're talking the same thing. We're talking the delayed payment in June, correct? Yeah. No, we don't have a bill, but there could be one in another committee or something, so that we can check that out. Other questions? So I guess if we approve this, we're approving moving that payment. Is that right, Amy? Right. So if you want to wait and get more information on that, we could leave that out till omnibus. Senator Alley? Yes. Oh, okay. So you need to make your motion with leaving that out until omnibus.
Mr. Chairman,
If there's no other questions, we're ready.
no other questions, I'll make a motion to accept the 22 budget with a review of the advancing that payment, delayed payment at omnibus.
Okay, motion is second by Senator Clays. Any other questions? Senator Petty.
So I'm understanding that with the recommendation that came from the committee, we're now amending this to hold off on including the delayed school payment that actually puts us back into being current on our payments to school districts and not making them reflect their budgets to reflect that they're getting money that they're not getting until a day late. But we're going to put it off and look at omnibus. Is this correct?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Senator Saltrop.
I would think that as we're looking at, we've looked at the capers layering payoff and paying off bonds. This certainly would be a prudent thing for us to correct, since we as a legislature put it into place some years back just to make it look like we had, or that districts had money that they did not have. So it's really would be correcting something that we did to make us as a state look to be more financially solvent. And right now we have the funding to be able to correct that error. So I would certainly support us keeping as is currently recommended in this budget.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I read the document correctly on page 3, it says the Committee on Education concurs with the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2022 with the following adjustment, and that adjustment was just to delete the $253 million for capers layering payments. That's part of Senate Bill 421. It would include, if my recommendation, the governor's recommendation of the delayed payment.
Okay, so we thought you made a motion to change that and Senator Solon Trump changed it. So you weren't suggesting that?
That's correct.
Okay,
Chairman, if I may.
Senator Soltrom.
That's why I understood that it was simply going to be reviewed at omnibus. We're not making it a strict part of the budget process, but we will re-review that adjustment at omnibus. That's what I understood the motion was and what I'm making that as a motion.
Senator Alley.
We're going to get to this in a minute. So correct, you're correct. So in addition to the note number 1, we have note number 2 that would be on that, which would be to not, to delete that special payment and look at it again in omnibus. That is the way I understand that.
I think that's the way the motion was made. That's why we're making sure that
Just
we're all on the same page, I guess.
Okay.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm sitting here wondering why, because we owe that money and it kind of messes all those school districts up from what I've heard, and I think this is time to clean up, so it's my opinion.
Senator Alley, you,
If I may, Senator, I'd like to yield to Senator Hawk.
Senator Hawk.
I want to strongly agree with Senator Fagg. I'd prefer to leave the original committee's recommendation in there. I only had a question about making sure we got that layering payment money transferred and it didn't mess up the budget. But I think it's time to get that done, and I certainly think we don't need to put that in this recommendation, and I think we go in with a better position when we do the mega bill and potentially go into conference with the House. So I wouldn't put it in here myself, that recommendation too.
Senator Alley.
Check that out.
Okay. Further discussion? Senator Alley, can you put your mic on?
And now, thank you.
So you might state what you just stated.
My concern was that there might be a bill that addresses this similar to the layering payments that we did on Senate Bill 421. I think there's another bill out there that addresses this $199 million delayed payment. So I would like to check that out, but I agree with the bill that with the statement that Senator Solontrop had earlier.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our reason why then would be to check that. If it checks out okay, we're on board with it. Okay? I mean, if we're going to, that'd be our reason for doing this. There wouldn't be any other reason at this point, would there, Senator Alley?
Senator Alley.
Thank you. I just didn't want a duplication of effort if we do it here, and we already had a bill out to do that. So let's check that out.
Okay. So do we want to wait on this report out until we check that out, or just wait till the omnibus like you made the motion? Senator Soltrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend that we go with the motion because we're going to check it out any number of ways. Whether there's a bill out there or whether we just want to discuss it further, it's just another, it's just an item to bring up at omnibus, and we'll drill down and go through it.
Okay. Senator Hawk.
Could I suggest if we do this, that we say omnibus or earlier if information is found, so that if it's possible to, assuming we might go into a conference on the mega bill, that
Senator Soltrom.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, is that a substitute motion or?
it's hopefully a friendly suggestion.
We haven't voted on the previous motion, so I
Right.
didn't know if that was a substitute motion, or is he wanting me to withdraw my motion and restate my motion?
Senator Hawk.
If it would expedite our discussion, I would offer it as a substitute motion. I assume we're just voting on this as.
It's up to you now, Senator.
Senator Solon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that would be a substitute motion, so you'd have to take action on that.
Okay, well, discussion on the substitute motion. Senator Alley.
I agree with the substitute motion.
Okay. So the substitution motion, we have a second. Senator Fagg seconds it. Further discussion. Senator Petty.
I just need a clarification. What is the substitute motion?
Senator Hawk.
That we would review the delayed school payment at omnibus or earlier if possible.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Senator Solon-Trump. That concludes our reports for today, and we are adjourned. Oh, sorry, okay.
I heard it.
Not from me. Okay, if you would proceed to 2023.
All right.
Sorry, I'm just used to we're doing 22 and 23, and
It's all right. I've read the wrong budgets before. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kansas State Department of Education budget for 23. The agency requests $6.5 billion, including $4.4 billion for FY23. This is an all funds increase of $354 million, or 5.8%, including an SGF increase of $187.9 million, or 4.5% above the 22 estimate. The increase is primarily due to anticipated school finance increases, additional federal COVID-19 pandemic relief funding, and 12 enhancement requests totaling $84 million, including $83.7 million SGF. The 23 agency request includes 269 FTE positions, which is the same number as the FY22 revised estimate. Significant items in the agency request include the following. Federal COVID funding. The agency request includes $479 million to reflect the federal ESSER funds, the EAN funds for 23. This is an increase of $124 million above the FY22 revised estimate. Approved school finance increases. The agency request includes school finance increases approved by the 21 legislature, including increases to special education state aid, $7.5 million, state foundation aid, $86.6 million, supplemental state aid, $10.4, and capital outlay state aid, $2.4, for above the FY22 revised estimate. CAPERS rate adjustments. The agency request includes CAPERS rate adjustments totaling $9.8 million, all SGF. Governor recommendations. The governor recommends expenditures of $6.4 billion, including $4.2 billion SGF for FY23. This is a decrease of $127 million, including an SGF decrease of $152 below the agency's 23 request. The overall decrease is primarily attributable to the governor's recommending adoption of the fall 21 education consensus adjustment. The SGF decrease is also partially attributable to the decrease in CAPERS layering payment expenditures due to the governor's recommendation to pay off CAPERS layering payments in 22. Additional decreases in the governor's recommendation include the following. Enhancement, special education services, state aid. The governor's recommendation includes a decrease of $74.1 million SGF to not recommend the adoption of the agency's enhancement request for special education state aid for 23. Enhancement schools and communities and schools. The governor's recommendation includes a decrease of $35,000 SGF to not recommend adoption of the agency's enhancement request to increase the funding for the community and schools program. Partially offsetting these decreases in the governor's recommendation are several recommendations for additional expenditures, including recommending adoption of 5 and partial adoption of 1 of the agency's 12 enhancement requests. The governor also recommends expenditures of $31.1 million, all from the special revenue funds for the children's cabinet for FY23. This is an increase of $500,000, all from the Children's Initiative Fund, above the agency's FY23 request. This increase is attributable to the governor's recommending expenditures of $500,000 for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. The governor's recommendation also includes 270.3 FTE positions, which is 1 FTE position above the 23 request. The additional FTE position is attributable to the governor's recommendation for a dyslexia coordinator. The governor also recommends a transfer from the Key Fund to the CIF in the amount of $52.3 million for FY23. The Senate Committee on Education recommendation is the following. For 23, recommendation, add language to allow Kansas Department of Education to distribute excess funds in the local school district contributions checkoff fund to school districts for FY23. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions. Yes or no only.
Questions on 23? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering on the governor's recommendation and includes a decrease of $74 million on the adoption of special education state aid. I just wondered if the reason for that. If
There was a recommendation to increase the special education aid over a 5-year period, but the governor did not recommend that. It was a plan to get up to 92%, but the governor is not recommending that. And again, why? I'm not sure.
Other questions? Seeing none, if you'd like to make a motion for 22 and 23 as amended.
Mr. Chairman, did we not pass out 22? Okay. All right. I'll make a recommendation that we adopt the budget for 22-23 for the Kansas State Department of Education with the previously discussed amendments.
I have a motion, second by Senator Clays. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, Senator Solon-Trump, thank you. It looks like we are completed for today, so with that, we are adjourned.